You're listening to Artistic Finance, show 169. On today's show, Amy D Lux interviews Ben Davis, founder of Illuminate, a San Francisco nonprofit that rallies large groups of people together to create impossible works of public art. They discuss the Bay Bridge lights, raising $1 million a month, conversely, turning down millions of dollars in funding, and the economy of generosity versus economy of reciprocity. This interview was recorded in August of 2023, more than a year ago. That's when I was on hiatus, raising Theo, moving from New York to Phoenix, and joining academia. Amy jumped in and recorded some interviews, but lo and behold, I have just now gotten around to editing them. Now, the timeline doesn't matter for the subject material because it's larger picture discussions and the work that's discussed is still being done. But I'm mentioning it because Ben mentioned several dates and projects that are now complete or underway, including a very large fundraise, a fundraise that's larger than a lot of Broadway show budgets. So make sure to listen for that, as I'll provide an update about it at the end of the show. You don't need to know the geography of San Francisco to enjoy today's episode. But if you've never been there, a quick glance at the map to see where the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Park are will help you understand the scale and spread of Illuminate's installations. The Bay Bridge is not the Golden Gate Bridge. It looks similar in structure, but it's unpainted, or at least appears metallic gray, and it's much longer. The last time I was in San Francisco was 2017 when I was assistant lighting designer for the musical Roman Holiday. On days off, I remember wandering around the Bay Area and seeing lights on the bridge. I loved it because it was in constant motion and very prominent in the skyline. Of course, other than admiring the art and technology and the scale, I didn't really think about the logistics, but assumed it was a city project championed by the Department of Tourism and that it had come from a request for proposals. I didn't realize how it came about, whose idea it was, or how it was funded. And you're going to hear those amazing details today. One last thing, Ben mentions some artwork. In the video version of this episode, which is on YouTube, those images are included. You'll also find photos of each one of the works via links in the show notes or on your podcast app or at artisticfinance.com/169. Without further ado, let's get to the show.
You are listening to Artistic Finance, where we help creatives learn about the business of show business.
Ben, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Ben Davis. I live in San Francisco. I run the arts nonprofit Illuminate here in San Francisco. And, on a personal level, I'm in an amazing part of my life right now with the level of creative agency I never thought I would have access to.
That's excellent. So one of the things we always start off with is asking, are you good or bad with money?
I think that's a rather binary question. I'll put the facts out for people. I'm sitting here in this house. This is in San Francisco. I have about 2 years of mortgage payments left. They're going to expire at the same month that I turn 65 years old. I run an arts nonprofit that raises millions of dollars in philanthropy towards projects here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Clearly, there has to be some kind of financial fluidity to make all that happen. On the other hand, I have I think I would just call it a strange relationship rather than good or bad with money. And in some ways, maybe strained too. It bothers me. The whole capitalistic system almost bothers me in some ways. And I don't pay attention to things like retirement accounts that much, or move things around. I try and just sort of be steady and just push it away and then hope for the best in some ways. But I have also taken most of the important decisions I've made in my life from a creative perspective and a professional perspective have been forms of economic suicide. So I feel fortunate to sort of be able to keep making it work here in a place like San Francisco, given the choices that I've made. I don't think I could be happier. So I think there's this powerful letting go of money that's also connected to the ability to find your way in the world.
That's very interesting. And I think we'll dig a little bit more into that. There's a lot of trust with that ethos and a lot of flow. And it's clearly been working for you and for Illuminate.
There's a lot of privilege associated with that. You know, I was born in 1960, a white dude in America. Well, my parents didn't have a lot of money. I had a lot of privilege and access to things and could take risks that other folks couldn't take. So I want to just acknowledge, and even just the timing, right? The timing that I bought this house at a time when you could buy a house in San Francisco on something other than a fabulously wealthy, you know, sort of set of circumstances. So I don't pretend to have any genius. I have a lot of good luck, and I think I've just tried to take advantage of the opportunity to do good around, you know, as I saw it around me. I just want to acknowledge that as part of the, you know, the good fortune.
I appreciate that. And I know a lot of our listeners appreciate that. We do try to, you know, keep things in perspective and understand what opportunities are given and available to different people from all walks of life. So I really appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about Illuminate and, you know, your brainchild and how that came to be. Illuminate's been making waves with light across San Francisco, creating all kinds of beautiful light installations, working with artists all over the city, and just creating awe for residents and tourists alike. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to be, when you started it, what the early days of Illuminate looked like?
I'm trying to think where to jump in. You know, for Illuminate didn't quite come out of the blue, although it kind of felt like it. For 20 years, I had a design and communication firm here in San Francisco called Words, Pictures, Ideas. And really the sweet spot of our passion was infrastructure projects. I sort of see God in the infrastructure. I cut my teeth back in Massachusetts, starting off as an intern and leaving 8 years later as the manager of public information on the Boston Harbor Cleanup Project, a $4 billion environmental improvement project. And got a real taste for what happens when large groups of people come together to solve intractable problems. It's really pretty magical and divine. And was enjoying doing that. And one of the projects that we had been working on for 7 years was the Bay Bridge Seismic Safety Projects, the largest public works project at the time in California, to bring the Bay Bridge, which partially toppled in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, back into Lifeline standards, this 1936 structure. So it was a heroic human effort. And I love the bridge. And one day as I was trying to think how you let it shine the region's consciousness, it revealed itself to me as a canvas of light, something that I really shouldn't be thinking about, or I have no business thinking about it. I'm not technical. It's not my realm. But it was a powerful vision that moved through me, and I decided to act on it on my own time and dime. And 2.5 years later, the Bay Lights manifested on the side of the Bay Bridge, one of the leading works of public art in the world by the artist Villareal, who I didn't know at the time when we started the project. But there's this seemingly divine intervention of the right people showing up at the right time to take this project from pure impossibility into existing in the world. And it was an interesting journey on many levels, including economically. And I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, I know this is a sort of a finance-related podcast, but this was a crazy moment in my life, to drop everything, to absorb company resources of this 20-person firm that I headed, to will this project into existence in a way that didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then when the project went live, sort of was getting ready to go back and hopefully save this company that I had let drift. A lot of amazing people in it, but sometimes the leader of the organization, the clients want to see you around, and you really are needed. But as I went on a short vacation and came back, I realized, oh my God, the Bay Lights are suffering. And instead of having my 8 a.m. staff call on Monday morning, I had an 8 a.m. emergency call with the team on the Bay Lights to start to try and fix that project. And another year passed. And then the Bay Lights were going to go away. And I had to make this choice. Either I'm going to go and save this piece of art down the side of the Bay Bridge, or I'm going to go back and save this company. And the logical thing to do would be the company. That's where the income was. But I ended up closing down the company, taking about a 3x pay cut, and launching off to run an arts nonprofit here in San Francisco, something I'm uniquely unqualified to do. And that was about a decade ago. And it's been a fascinating journey on every level.
That's really amazing. How is it that you moved over to primarily doing the Bay Lights and left the other job completely?
I mean, that transition was difficult. That was a 20-year sort of identity, personal identity. I put everything I had in some ways to this company and to managing it and to nurturing it and having pride in every single thing that we did. And we did beautiful work. Won a couple of Webby Awards for Best Website in Government, amazing team. And I had a lot of personal identity wrapped up into it. And the idea of letting that go to free fall into this unknown space of running an arts nonprofit in San Francisco was deeply personally challenging. And then when I did it, something really interesting happened. At first, the Bay Lights were such a sensation that invitations started to come in from around the world, from fancy places with really big budgets, kind of lucrative offers to think about doing something in Dubai, with unlimited resources, or giant malls in Singapore, or cool projects, historic bridges in Montreal, their tallest residential tower in Chicago. I'm like, wow, you know what? Maybe you can not just make a living, but do well doing this and travel first class. And, I can fake my way through this stuff. And I was tempted by that, but I realized, that's not why you shut this company down. That's not why you reordered your life. What I really wanted to do was to stay put, go deep, and try and make a difference in the place that we live. And over time, have just said no to everything outside of San Francisco and chosen to concentrate exclusively here and not worry about the money. Just worry about making a difference in the world and try and make the money somehow work out so we can keep going. In some ways, the most difficult thing about making art is figuring out how you're going to keep doing it. So that's been an interesting journey too, from a financial perspective. Because for the first time ever, I had a board. There was this board of directors that you have to have as a nonprofit. I never had that when I ran my own company. And the board of directors is, asking you questions like, what's the business model here? I'm saying, well, I don't know, we'll do good work and more good work will follow. I don't know. They're like, that's not a business model. And they're pressing me. And then they're saying, well, look, you need to monetize the eyeballs on the Bay Bridge. You got 20 million eyeballs in that bridge and you need to monetize that. And I'm like, ooh, wow, I just threw up a little bit when you said monetize eyeballs. That's not going to happen. At that point, we were turning down corporate sponsorships and, people were saying, well, you can accept this offer to do the interior at Facebook and then use that money. It's like, I was a consultant. I didn't shut down the consultancy to be a consultant again to try and do what I want to do. I want to lean into what the purpose here is in San Francisco. And they kept pressing me, and I'm like, you should sell tickets. Like, I don't ever want to sell tickets. I don't want to create any barriers to admission, and they're like, they're good luck. They're just basically wishing me luck. And I finally had one day said, look, we're never going to have a business model. We're, if you need a metaphor, consider us a generosity machine. You put a dollar in one end and two come out the other. This is really about the culture of generosity, not the economy of reciprocity. After, a lot of hand-wringing and sort of creative soul searching and exploring, we came up with a model called our Illuminary supporters, which are people who get what we do and have the means to support us, but don't necessarily want to be in the board or have any influence on what we do, which is perfect for us. And so we have a small group of people who care about the city and have faith in the organization, and they make an annual gift of $50,000 a year, which basically covers our operating costs, or we're close to doing that. And which is like a huge lift off the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Suddenly you're out of that survival mode, you're into community, you're into self-actualization, and you're really in the purpose of what you do. So that shift from the economy of reciprocity to the culture of generosity has been radically transformational for us. And the notion that we're part of this high trust network that is not trying to tell us what to do, but is inspired by what we're doing and want us to do more of it is really liberating. It also means that the board that I have now isn't a money board, so they don't feel like they have to have a bunch of influence or want to have a bunch of influence. They're really just an advisory board who know that their number one goal is to be there when I need them and to try and not get in the way and to continue to let me and this organization take bold risks on behalf of San Francisco.
And how did you find those first supporters? Because that is, a challenge, right? Where they're asking you for these very specific business proposal and monetizing, and you needed money, but you didn't want to do it just for the money. So how were you able to find those supporters that could, keep with your vision?
Some of it does feel kind of like divine intervention, but, the track record of work that we were producing was really solid, right? Having the Bay Lights there at all, bringing them back in 2016 because they were originally a 2-year temporary installation, and we were able to bring them back. We had just lit the Conservatory flowers with the Summer of Love installation. We'd done some installations in the Castro. We were starting to really show what's possible when we can take on projects that don't have to be, financially remunerate the organization. So we don't have to sell tickets. We can just try and make a difference in the world and not charge the projects anything either, just to go do a project and just let that, we didn't even touch any of the funds on the Conservatory flowers. We let that go through a different nonprofit that was easier to do at the time. And people, people had faith in what we were doing. I think integrity is really attractive in a world that often lacks it. And the organization has integrity. We turn away millions of dollars because we refuse to put an ad on the side of the Bay Bridge or sell title naming rights. And the work that we do is really tuned in to the energy of the city. I'm in this city every single day, and I've trained myself to think of it as a canvas. And I love following the contours of not just the city itself, but its history and its lines and its cultures, and finding ways and projects that present opportunities to tease that out in a meaningful way with a lot of integrity is enticing to people, attractive.
And so back to the Bay Lights. So those came down about, a year ago now? Has it been that long or not quite?
On March 5th of this year, on the 10th anniversary of them first going live in 2013.
And what is the plan moving forward? Where are we now with that development?
Well, the plan is to really, for the first time ever, have a custom engineered set of LEDs, a whole system that are designed from the ground up to do well over time on the side of the Bay Bridge. We had been using off-the-shelf products that just were not suited to the extremely harsh conditions of San Francisco Bay Bridge and the Bay, where you have salty air, high winds, lightning strikes, 24/7 vibration, car grit and grime, expansion and contraction of the cables by a few feet every day. And it's just, overwhelms the system over time. So there's a new system by Musco Lighting, an American-based family-owned firm out of Iowa, who were very familiar with the Bay Lights. They did all the lighting on the eastern span of the Bay Bridge, more road lighting, but beautifully done road lighting. Everyone knows that in the eastern span with that white lighting theme. And so they're taking on the challenge of redesigning the Bay Lights, and adding to that challenge is doubling the number of LEDs so that instead of, on the northern side of the western span of the Bay Bridge, we'll, instead of just facing to the the penthouses in the North Bay, we'll actually wrap another LED on the other side of the cable, so we're accessible to communities across the Bay, from Bayview to Alameda to Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond and Treasure Island. As a matter of aesthetic equity, we'll open up the installation further, and even more compellingly and challengingly to the bureaucracies we had to work with and make sure this is a safe installation, make that experience accessible to drivers in the Bay Bridge as they enter San Francisco at night. So you'd come through this portal of public art of 25,000 LEDs, spread out over 1.8 miles in gently moving, white only, monochromatic, low wattage light field through which the city of San Francisco will open up. But we think that'll be an iconic way to enter San Francisco, and once again position San Francisco as a world leader in not just technology, but really systems changing, like taking a system that's designed to say no and deconstructing and reconstructing so we can say yes to the things that we want to see happen.
And has that new phase been funded already, or are we still doing fundraising for that?
It's a total of $11 million to bring this piece back with a guaranteed fixed cost contract to keep it looking beautiful, which will go this time for a decade. And that's $11 million, of which we're breaking into two chunks. $10 million of that is in major gifts. And the 11th million is through crowdfunding. So sort of big gifts, and then giving everyone a chance to give smaller gifts so everyone can feel attached to the project. We are at 7.5 million of the 10 million in pledges needed to get this project out of the blocks again and moving. So we're 75% of the way, pretty easy math. Even I can handle that one. $2.5 million needed to ensure this project is back and get everybody moving again. And then on that crowdfunding, we actually started that campaign can continue, while the project's in motion. We are at $477,000, almost halfway, 47%, 48% of that fundraise left to. So we're doing really well. Although the next phase of this project is bringing this $2.5 million in. We're a little stalled out, although, in truth, Illuminate is an organization that's here to create and not just fundraise. And so we've been having a wild summer of creation here in San Francisco, and we'll dig our cleats back into the soil this September with the remaining raise. And our strategy is really one of organizational vulnerability. We didn't hire a fundraiser on this lift, and for all the stuff Illuminate's doing, including 1.5 miles of activation on JFK Promenade and Golden Gate Park, the revival of the Spreckles Temple of Music, now the Golden Gate Band Show, will be host 125 live free concerts on an annual basis. All of this work we do, there's only 2 salaried staff. So we're extremely lean organization. And we chose to take on this fundraising ourselves with the theory that we have a really good story and we have a good network. And really, for the most part, we can tap people on the shoulder and don't want to basically spend another 10%, which adds another $1 million to a project of this magnitude, to have someone beat us up to make us call the people we're supposed to call in the first place anyway. So we've done super well to get that first $7.5 million. And now we're just going to go vulnerable. Organizational vulnerability. Our pipeline's empty. We're close. And this is going to happen through human connections. And you probably haven't heard how close we are and how much we need right now, but we want to get that message back out to the human network in San Francisco so we can make this project a reality as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it sounds like that was raised in a relatively short time.
Yeah, well, we let people know right at the start of January, at the start of this year. So, we're 10 months, or 8 months into it right now, which is amazing, right? It's almost $1 million a month. It is $1 million a month that we've raised. But on the other hand, there's some expectation setting and people are there's a lot of confusion, like, wait, they're gone forever. I heard they couldn't get the money or whatever it is. We're still in the hunt. We're the underhype, over-deliver organization. We're really an action-oriented group. And this is another thing financially, just for your folks, I know this is an artistic crowd. What I don't want to create is a fundraising zombie organization, constantly out with appeals all the time, fund us, fund us, fund us. I kind of don't like that. I get that you have to do that, but I'm always hoping we can use the power of light itself, right? Light does 2 things exceptionally well. It attracts and it enlightens. It lets you see what's already there. So we're hoping through the power of sort of the projects that we have that we can attract and enlighten people and just use that as the force for funding when we need it and not having to constantly scurry for funding all the time and stress everybody out, including ourselves.
So, obviously the projects have different sizes, but I would assume that depending on the scale, a lot of that money obviously goes to technology and materials, but you're also paying these artists that you're collaborating with. So is there a formula that you work with, or how do you meet artists and how do you take care of them on the projects?
Every project is a little different depending on where it is in the life cycle of the project, life cycle of the artists, life cycle of the technology, the realm of possibility. Typically, an Illuminate project is less likely to happen than happen until it happens. And then it happens, and then everyone thought, oh, it always should be there. But it makes it challenging to figure out how you're going to fund before you have funds, to keep people moving, to be fair to everybody engaged. I often tell everyone, and you've heard this from me, Amy, before, that nobody gets rich on an Illuminate project. The best you can do is maybe break even. For the most part, everyone is going to be generous. Everyone's going to self-sacrifice just a bit, almost as much as they can towards the common good to make a project a reality. So it really is a case-by-case basis. And many of the projects that we take on, first of all, don't even have light directly engaged. They're daytime projects. They're projects that have no electricity or illumination. I love that people think we are doing just light, but the truth is we're just doing a lot of things, and it's really about enlightenment. So yeah, it's a kind of an interesting time to try and find our way through it. And we're about to hit another economic stress wall. I can feel it because we're doing so much, and even though we're doing it lean, we literally don't have time to fundraise. We're just having too much fun making amazing things happen. But it's no one's failure to support the organization. It's only my failure or our organization's failure to inspire people. So the things that we're doing, I find super inspiring right now. And we've invested this summer not trying to raise money for the Bay Lights, but really investing in the power of inspiration in San Francisco. And we've had a tremendous run over the course of the summer with this really interesting project we call the Summer of Awe, which is a series of giant laser art installations that all happened in the last, 6-8 weeks. You're seeing me bedraggled at the end of that process, but it was really amazing.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the installations that happened during the Summer of Awe? And I'm also curious to hear about the cooperation, not just with artists, but with the city itself and government entities and how those pieces all come together.
Yeah, Illuminate's mission is illuminate rallies large groups of people together to create impossible works of public art that through awe, AWE, free humanity's better nature. So our projects, they really are, by definition, they're sort of impossible when you start off. There was no way to put lights on the side of an interstate freeway 500 feet above water and live traffic. There was no way to transform JFK Promenade in a matter of weeks with art at the pace that we were doing and the things that we were doing and putting things in the middle of the road. And, every project is like this. And so it takes all kinds of people to come together, bureaucrats who get no more pay to take on this much more paperwork to deconstruct and reconstruct a system that's designed to say no so it can say yes to the things that we want to see, that we all want to see. Or to philanthropists who are giving money with, you can't put your logo on this and you can't put your name on it. And, we just make it challenging in some ways, but we keep the integrity high. Or to the technologists who are asked to think of applying technology in a way that hadn't quite been imagined before, either at a scale or in an environment or in a way. So it's a series of sort of impossible divides. And the artist sometimes, and the artist isn't always important, but I sort of always want to, in some ways, challenge the myth of the artist and the myth of the founder, which is so prominent in a place like San Francisco. Nobody does anything on their own. By definition, the works that illuminate move beyond becoming a work of the artist, becoming a work of community. It takes everybody doing their best, pulling together generously, problem solving virulently to manifest a vision. And on our whole Summer of Awe that we just went through, we actually decided collectively that we're just a group of people putting photons through space, and they don't mean anything until they hit a particulate matter. In that case, in San Francisco, it's always our fog that rolls in on almost a daily basis. There's a local character here named Carl the Fog, Carl with a K, and everybody in San Francisco knows who Carl the Fog is. So we formally named Carl the Fog as the artist for the entire Summer of Awe laser installations. This is a way to, sort of get rid of this notion of the artist as this sort of revered figure. And the truth is, all of us are just pulling together to make our city more beautiful.
I love that. I didn't realize that Carl the Fog was the credited artist for the Summer of Awe, but it makes perfect sense. And, obviously a lot of people on this podcast are in lighting and in entertainment. We use fog intentionally. So that is always a perk to have the fog there for illuminated projects in the Bay Area. So as far as artists that are not part of the environment, how do you find them, or how do they find you, and what is the process of coming together?
I think it really depends. It's a case by case situation. With the Bay Lights, I was starting to move down the path of, okay, I'm going to try and crack open the permission system here, and literally the first call was to to an insurance broker. Like, okay, the Caltrans is saying that liability will stop me. Let's get past that. And then getting into sort of the technical aspects of the bridge, or really of just the permission process, and started to get traction there. And I realized, well, I have no idea how to really do this, and started to crack my knuckles and search online for, someone who could LED monumental. I didn't even know what to type in, and then someone texted me an image of themselves backlit by this really cool medallion of light. And I'm like, where are you? And what's that? And I'm at the San Jose Museum of Art, and it's a Leo Villareal show. And I typed in Leo Villareal, with it one click, I was at the site. And I thought, oh my God, I think this is the dude that I would want to work with in this project. And an introduction, a phone call, I was talking to Leo minutes later. And I never spoke to another artist in the project. Grace Light is a result of for instance, Grace Light at Grace Cathedral, a beautiful light installation, one of the deepest work Illuminate has done, is a 2-year collaboration with the artist George Zisiadis, who received this vision and brought it to me, or kind of emerged in conversation in some ways and evolved over the course of those 2 years. And George is just a fantastic human, and he lavished himself on the project, as did Gabriel Gold, who's the composer on that project. They worked together for 6 months just on the score of it. And some of that was, I get, this is an interesting thing. I was talking to someone who's run a dance nonprofit for 50 years here in the Bay Area. And then she's like, I confess that privately, it's a little annoying that this notion that every artist has to get paid in every project. You can't really create in a city if you have to we have to kind of come together and just want to create, and you do your best and you create mechanisms. But, the idea that you can't even get started unless you're going to pay everybody is a non-starter. It means you don't create. So I want to drive as much, sort of like, let's bring the philanthropy in and feed the whole ecosystem of the creative community, including artists and everybody else who supports those artists. And you do the best you can. And sometimes you're like, you know what, there ain't nothing here, but if we want to see this happen and it's for everybody's best to make it happen, let's all find a way to keep moving until either some funds appear or we get the reward, like JFK Promenade. The love blocks that are out there. I don't know if you've seen Mark Deem and the Misfit toys, love blocks. Those were on the playa, last year. In less than 3.5 weeks later, they manifested themselves in the grass of Golden Gate Park. Through the generosity of Mark Deem and that team who invested heavily in that piece. But, they created that art because they wanted to do something magical. And it is loved right now as we speak. It's a sunny day in San Francisco. I guarantee you there's probably 20 kids crawling on those blocks right now. Families pulled up with bikes, people taking photographs and selfies with the blocks and the conservatory of flowers in the back. And it's like that all day long. And there are thousands of people creating memories and joy from this work of art that's called Remember When. It's really this touching upon the childhood and this intergenerational touch point. And so while you could argue that we didn't compensate Mark fairly, and we didn't, because he and his team just leaned in with this love. On the other hand, man, what an amazing canvas and opportunity. And, we drive as much resources as we can to them as they need them. But sometimes you just do what you have to do to make beauty in the world.
There are so many incredible activations along the promenade, and there used to be cars there as well. So there was a shift at one point. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that came about, where we were even able to put so much art along that?
Yeah, this is 1.5 miles of roadway. It used to be called JFK Drive in Golden Gate Park. It was, for the most part, used as a cut through from the neighborhood. I think 75% of the traffic was just trying to find a faster route to your house over in the Sunset, Richmond. And for 40-something years, on Sundays, it was closed to cars. And it was really nice. You could cruise down it. It was a really nice day in the park. Just opened up and created a calmer space. But during COVID, there was a push to shut it to cars, so there was a safe place for people to walk, and it became very, very popular. And then in April of, I guess, 1.5 years ago, the Board of Supervisors, in a marathon session, kind of contentious vote, but they 7-4 voted to keep it closed to cars forevermore, and there's a huge celebration. And then kind of a mean rich lady from the fancy museum in the park who wanted to see cars come back used her vast personal fortune to kind of manipulate the ballot process and put a ballot measure back on that was kind of access for all on JFK and basically designed to bring cars back. And it was infuriating that someone's wealth could do that. So on very short notice, we leaned into the challenge of not telling anyone how to vote, but showing people what they had, before this election was my driving goal. Again, I want to be clear that I wasn't taking a political position. I didn't say yes on yes or no on that. I just our team just wanted to show the possibility of the space. And we worked with a group called Paint the Void, who we brought in 12 muralists. We compensated those folks. We not just compensated them, though. We didn't force them to compete. We just selected them for their talent and diversity level and their willingness to work on this on short notice. And these guys are used to painting storefronts, 8x8 squares. And now we're asking them to paint 100 by 100 foot murals on the ground. You could see their heads spinning. Our commitment was just take a breath for a second. Leo couldn't put lights on the bridge by himself. You're going to be supported. We're going to block and tackle for you. You don't have to do any work with Rec and Park. You don't have to submit a proposal. You don't have to do anything. We're going to literally put barriers up so that you can paint. We will actually bring volunteers in and prime the whole thing for you and let you direct volunteers. So I need you to just breathe really deep. We walk through the space, and I could see their vision just would get panicky when it moved beyond a certain point, and just move all the way to the curb and know that we got your back. This is your chance to breathe and create at a different scale that you haven't been able to do before. And it was awesome to watch the way that system worked and the way those folks created these murals that you've got paint down within a matter of weeks through the whole process of Rec and Park and the Arts Commission and MTA and everybody else. And that art made such a huge difference, and everyone knew, like, we talk about the importance of art in the social space and its ability to create change. This is it. This is November 8th is the election. Here it is. It's September 1st, and we got to go. And how are we going to make this happen in the time frame that we have? I should say most people couldn't respond. Actually, all the organizations are supposed to carry the most, the Bike Coalition, Walk SF, Safe Streets, blah, blah, blah. They were so fully extended that they couldn't even help on anything. So it was the artist community that came in and made the difference on this project. Reuben Rude's giant whale that springs up from the middle of the road. I hope you can show some photographs on this podcast. The Dana Kings, Rooted in Justice, the Charlie Gadekans, chimes in the tunnel. It just goes on. Actually, the doggy diner heads, the artifact of these doggy diner heads that we put in, which, whether they're art or not, they were just amazing in their ability to create transformation. So it was beautiful to work with folks. And here's what's best. We all love each other. There's not the tensions. Everyone knows they were well supported. Everyone knows everyone around them, including them, were being generous. And we were all working towards something bigger than ourselves. What was supposed to be a super close election, and everyone credits this collaboration on JFK, turned into a landslide, like the kind of thing that changes the future of the city. We could have been retrograde and lost it all, but instead we just said, no, this is important, and everybody came out and voted, and it's the most directly transformational thing that I can think of working on in San Francisco. Amazing and completely possible through the culture of generosity, and also compensating those as best we can, and supporting them beautifully. And also, by the way, Illuminate does nothing where we create competitions. We don't do call for proposals. We don't do things that create, more losers than winners, and or create different sets of expectations. We try and really tune in deep, and then understand a path forward that is collaborative in nature and doesn't rely on these competition models that artists spend so much time and energy and interest, and no one really thinks about the sunk cost of that. And then there's, like I say, you get a winner and 20 losers, and already the energy is all bunched up. So we're trying things in different ways that defy what I think would be classic economist models.
So what is next for the promenade? Will it just continue to develop and bring more and more works of art along that road?
Yeah, it's very interesting. We've originally had a 6-month sort of open-ended permit with Rec and Park to explore the edges of possibilities, and that's been extended for a year. And we're working. Again, we had a pretty busy summer with other stuff, but we've been doing a few things. We have a couple big pieces coming in, though. We have potentially, I guess tomorrow, I'll be at the Arts Commission, and we'll see if we get clearance for this. We have a huge piece, 120 feet long, that's going to be at Burning Man this year. But we hope to put this big piece right across from the skating place, across JFK, and a little stretch of grass between the road and the sidewalk. It is a couple of words that start 8 feet off the ground and go another 12 feet up into the sky. And they just says no dancing right across from the skating place. And we just think that's such a fun repurposing of that, kind of like the love blocks. We think that can be pretty magical. And then we have another set of sculptures coming in from Australia that are weird and strange, but we think are be as delightful as the doggy diner heads that recently left the park. So yeah, a lot coming up. A bunch of stuff. We're having a fun time out there. beer garden, there's live music, there's coffee carts, there's all kinds of things happening out there that are all part of this opening up. The 100 golden chairs that you can sit in, the pianos that you can cruise along and play. There's just a lot of love and energy out there. It's a smile factory, and we're going to keep growing it, and then really leaning into the deeper transformation that not only is this, was a place of hurried passage and then maybe lingering passage, a road that you were allowed to walk or bike on, to this place that's really for people first, to really making it feel like a promenade and starting to cut some holes in that road and plant some trees and do some things where we have an evolution of that space. That is more, like I say, it's cheaper, it's more experimental until they decide they either want to come up with some big fancy plan or they just let us evolve into a real natural use of the space.
Well, Burning Man's a great place to, try some things out before installing them. You're talking about the no dancing piece that's going to move over there. Will that be its first year at Burning Man, or has it been shown before?
No, it's its first year. It's a group called Looking Up Arts out of San Francisco. Great group. We've worked with them on a couple of projects before, the Pink Torch and the Rainbow Torch. They made these beautiful objects for us. And we've had some projects in development. So I'm really pleased to work with these guys and give an immediate next life for this piece that they're working on right now, that they're hustling to get out to Burning Man.
Great. And will we see you on the playa?
You may see me on the playa. No, I'm going to be on the playa this year. I vowed never to do anything at Burning Man. My oath to myself was like, dude, that's, everyone's behind a gated community. It's like they don't lavish the attention there. Bring it back to the city where people live. Let more people experience it. Let it last longer. But I confess, I'm so determined to defy every system. I'm defying my own system. So I'm helping facilitate a really cool piece out there called Pink Moon, which if you pull it off and you're there on Wednesday night, when the August 30th, when the full supermoon comes over the playa, we're going to use some of these giant laser beams. We haven't even talked about what these beams were yet for the Summer of Awe. And we're going to create a bunch of them in a circle that will slowly follow the path of the moon across the playa sky all night long from sunset to sunrise. First time ever anyone's asked for, never mind received FAA permission to do that, which we have for that particular context. And certainly really interesting use of this motorized mechanism to track a planetary object.
That sounds incredible. And I can't wait to see it, because somehow in all these years, even though I was supposed to go 20 years ago, I've not made it to Burning Man. And this year I'll be going for my first time. So I'll get to see it in person. Very excited. So you talked a little bit about the breakdown of the funding on the Bay Lights and how, $1 million is going to be privately funded, but 10 million will be privately funded and $1 million will be crowdsourced. On other projects, maybe not even of that scale, what determines when you're using private funding and when you're using public funding? How does that kind of break down?
It's all crowdfunding is not public funding. Crowdfunding is private funding at a smaller scale. But in my mind, there's either public sector funding or there's private philanthropy funding. And we're not doing any corporate funding, no corporate. So it's all either the cultural generosity, or I guess, you sort of, when appropriate, you can use some city funding. For the Bay Lights, we're not asking for any city funding. I want all that art funding to stay in the cultural fabric of San Francisco. Bay Lights is a big project, and it's a philanthropic choice. And I want there to be a philanthropic choice. If the philanthropic community decides it's not worthy or we don't reach them enough, it doesn't happen. But I don't raid the kitty. I don't want to rip up the fabric. I want to augment the fabric instead of a yes and. We do take some funding from Grants for the Arts, a little bit from OEWD, super helpful given how lean we run. And that helps us provide a little bit of the baseline. It's sort of almost like having an extra luminary in our pocket or our group, but it's not that much. For instance, the 125 live free concerts at the band shell, that's all philanthropic. But Rec and Park doesn't charge permit fees. So this sort of is coming together because they know it's for the public good and we're not selling any tickets. So everybody is kind of pitching in where they can here and there. Sometimes it's soft contributions. Sometimes it's the ability to waive a fee. It's a mix. But for the most part, it's the culture of generosity always. Someone is finding a way to be generous to the organization or to the idea that the organization is supporting.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I think there's definitely so much room for that, especially these days. I hope that more people follow that model, because I think there's a lot of generosity when you're given the space for it. Is there anything else that you want to cover that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I think you should show photographs of the summer ball. We took these giant, what they call laser space cannons. We shot them down the center of Market Street over Pride Weekend. It created this ephemeral and just galactic rainbow, across the city of San Francisco, kind of hard to wrap your mind around. Then we took all those 12 laser space cannons and we shot them up through the center of Sutro Tower, this big radio antenna or television antenna in the center of San Francisco. That once you see this, that big things with the triangles on it, on its 50th birthday on July 4th. And then about a week later, we shot a bunch of those laser cannons directly up from the top of Quake Tower, which was spectacular and beautiful. And then just about 2 weekends ago, we went up to Nob Hill and we shot all 12 of those laser space cannons over the roof of the Pacific Union Club from the Fairmont Hotel, and all coalescing on the rose window of Grace Cathedral, creating an interior and exterior spectacle and really almost, divine moment. So to take that technology and apply it all these different ways across San Francisco and bend every permission system as we did it and get everybody moving in the right direction was unbelievable to see happen. It was beautiful. It's part of this notion. We call that the Summer of Awe, and we have created this open source moniker of San Francisco as the City of Awe. And we don't look at this as a branding exercise. We look at this as a declaration of who we are. We are a city of awe, but it's also an aspirational calling to who we must always be. So, one of the things that creates awe is watching acts of beautiful generosity. And to see this collective and collaborative act of generosity across our city is a source of awe for me. We're going to continue to create these expressions that lift everyone's chin a few degrees, that free humanity's better nature, that basically create a safer, more beautiful, more welcoming city for all people without the barrier of worrying about tickets or access. If you can just get here, take the BART, take the ferry, hitchhike, come into the bus station, just get here and we'll have things for you to see here in the City of Awe.
I love it. Just for fun, is there any question you would like to ask me, the guest host?
I know you too well. My questions would be too pointed, but let me ask you this question, Amy. What's your passion?
Ooh, I operate from a point of passion. So it's actually been a while since I've defined a specific passion. Like a lot of people, I've been redefining life and my purpose here the past couple of years. And I've made some big shifts in my life because I want to be more aligned with my passion and my ethics and what I want to bring to the planet. And for me, where those things kind of all come together is I have a mission to multiply love among us and bring out people's best. And I think that for me, it comes back to the arts as well, where I believe that we're all creative beings. Everything is a creation everything, even the most scientific, the refrigerator, right? Somebody created that. Someone sat down and thought about components and materials and energy and everything that we have in the modern world was somebody being creative in their mind, in their ideas, and they came up with a concept, and then through some way they made it reality. We fly in planes now, right? There was a time when we would have never conceived of that. These two guys running across a field with a piece of wood and a propeller, and now we're flying commercial planes all around the world. So I believe that it is who we are as humans to be creative. And we have a conflict in modern society where in our schools, at least in the US, where we don't really support the arts. and we have less funding for art classes and music classes and things like that. And you've got to get a job and be a doctor or a lawyer. And, there's all these rules about how we're supposed to adult. And I think that if we can bring people back to their deep down, genuine creativity, that we will just naturally thrive as a society. For me to be happy while I'm here, I want to bring people together and help them to tap into and unlock their creative nature and their true selves without fear. My passion personally, and the way that I create my art, is through lighting and through graphic design and bringing those elements together. But really, it's about creating a vehicle where others can see themselves in that formula and can step away from their day-to-day, collaborate and shine.
This is an exact description of what's happening at Illuminate. You kind of see this. What we're really doing is we're gathering together super talented people who are working in the sweet spot of their creative genius, generously towards the common good, with a goal greater than themselves. And when everybody is moving in that direction, where everyone's bringing the power of their selves to it, and there's this detachment from ego when you're doing that. You're pursuing something collectively, and sort of this collective effervescence, like a barn raising, where we're all just coming together to make this energy happen. It takes all of us. We can't do it alone. But I also have the chance to do the thing I love most in a way that feels powerful and generous to the world. When you get everybody moving that direction, anything becomes possible. It's amazing, and I'm witnessing it. And so when I ask a question like that, it's because I'm really trying to read the person to understand, is there a way that this energy can move into the metaphor I have right now for Illuminate? It's more of a vortex. It's just how are just so few of us creating so much of this positive energy, and it's this high trust network of people, who are again working in this really interesting way. Which in another way to use the word high trust is low fear, right? So it's very interesting to create a forgiving environment and a trusting environment where you're appropriately caring about each other, and making things happen for each other towards this common good. It's an amazing thing to experience and witness and watch. And then the pace of transformation is unbelievable right now. Those four laser projects we pulled off, a project in Golden Gate Park that we just birthed partway through called Polarity, 50-foot silken flags, and I just have the band shell. We've got music happening now in Union Square. As part of this is just energy is just moving out from this organization right now because we're surrounded or with this energetic vortex of people all doing what they love and giving each other permission to do so and finding ways to do that.
Yeah, and it's everyone lifting each other up. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I feel honored.
Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. I appreciate it. And I love everything you do. And I love everything that Illuminate has become. And so many people get to enjoy that. Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. I'll see you on the playa.
That's it for this week's episode. Thank you, Ben, for your time, and thank you to Amy for facilitating and conducting the interview. My takeaways are a bit lengthy today. I found so much in this conversation that I responded to. Before I get to them, I want to read an update from Ben about the $11 million fundraise. The Bay Lights are fully funded. We've reached our 11 million philanthropic campaign goal and are now moving at a brisk pace. If all goes to plan, installation will begin next month, and the Bay Lights will return with a grand lighting celebration early in 2025. Congrats to Ben and Illuminate on making that project happen. And now my takeaways. Taking a 20-year identity and switching paths from manager of data, then becoming an arts nonprofit leader is quite a bold and exciting career choice. It's almost expected when working in the arts to tie your human identity to the artist identity, which means it becomes difficult to achieve a career shift. Ben had a big project motivating that shift, but even so, that's a courageous decision. Choosing to not work outside San Francisco and forego lucrative projects and traveling, There is something so admirable to me about choosing to weave yourself into the fabric of a community. I have a strong identity with the St. Louis suburbs because I grew up here, but I also left for 18 years and lost that identity. But now I'm back, and the connection Ben has to San Francisco is something I'm wanting to choose to do here. We'll see. It's a repeating theme, but doing things for the public good rather than for individual benefit is refreshing. It's not often we see examples of that, though I will say a recent big example was Joe Biden backing out of the presidential race to allow Kamala Harris to take the reins. I never would have expected that to happen in my lifetime, but it reminded me that even though we love to be cynical, especially with politicians, there are a lot of people in the public sector who work for the greater good. Now, we don't always see it because their ego isn't there, but they do exist. In line with that, Ben's comment about integrity being attractive, it really is. Being honest, not having ulterior motives, being the person you appear to be, it absolutely is attractive. Keeping the organization lean. Ben mentioned there are only 2 full-time staff at Illuminate. For an organization that does as much public art at such a large scale, that is absolutely amazing. Now, granted, they are hiring lots of freelancers, but nonetheless, that is amazing. The comment from the board about monetizing 20 million eyeballs, that definitely sounds like a marketing and business strategy session. Ben's take on Illuminate being a generosity machine is amazing. He's choosing not to monetize or charge for admission, which is quite lovely. And I have so much respect for it because, as Ben mentioned right at the top, we're stuck in a capitalistic structure and it lacks a lot of humanity. So I relate to this ethos because the reason this podcast exists is to openly discuss and share information about artists living and thriving and making it work in capitalism. But of course, there are so many costs associated with the show that I've been sponsored to LDI by Ayrton in the past, and I have a Patreon page. All that to say, I respect Ben's intentional choice of shutting down the income generating company to focus on the culture of generosity. The myth of the artist and founder. I love that. Anybody working in the entertainment industry innately understands that singular artist is a myth. But in talking points and conversation day to day, we skip over that nuance. We think of artists as creating art. And I'll use the example of theater. So in theater, each artist is doing work, right? But the art created is a joint effort. So Audra McDonald is an amazing singer, but take her off the stage, take her out of the Majestic Theater, out of Gypsy, or remove the audience, and then Audra can't be the artist Audra McDonald. So same with Taylor Swift, a widely talented artist, but take away technology and the ability to stream music, or take away the design and production team for the Eras Tour, and Taylor Swift can't be Taylor Swift. And for lighting, we give a Tony Award for best lighting, but it only goes to the designer when that designer wouldn't be able to light the show without the entire team, which is hundreds of people who support the show, not to mention the performers and the front of house team. There's the crew that loads in the Source 4s in a warehouse in New Jersey, but they never get acknowledged, which is fine as we can't sort of give everybody credit or we'd all just be exhausted all the time. But we know that the support is happening. So I just love Ben's thought on that to call it a myth of the artist, because in order to be an artist, no matter what, you have to be part of a team. Raising $1 million a month, that's incredible, especially with the choice of staying lean and not bringing on a fundraising team. Detachment from ego. When they were talking about passion near the end, they both work on large-scale projects in which ego isn't helpful or necessary. In the back of my brain, I've always thought, like, this is what makes me a good collaborator. Like, what are the lighting needs of the production? What does the show need? It's not about me. It's about what I have the competency to do to make the production happen successfully. Working at a level of high trust, aka low fear. Now, this is something wildly understated, but an impactful way of working. So in life, you see collaborators work together time and time again. And the reason for that is not because those collaborators don't want to work with other people. It's because they've gained trust with their collaborators. They know what they're getting and they know their roles, their responsibilities. So I've never thought of this until Ben said it, but joining your collaborators on a new project is low fear. And fear is such a paralyzer. So I had an offline conversation with Richard Winkler when I interviewed him back on show 165. He was encouraging me to become a co-producer on his project. Co-producer meaning I need to find investors that collectively bring $250,000 to the project. Now, after hearing Ben finding $11 million, 250 sounds like nothing. But to me, an individual who doesn't sort of roll in circles of investors and whose peers and colleagues are entertainment industry lighting folks, my imagination is restricted. So anyway, I'm chatting with Richard and explaining that I love his project and would love to co-produce, and I just don't know enough people wanting to invest in Broadway. And Richard says, "What's stopping you?" I was oddly vulnerable with Richard, and I said, "Fear." Now, there's more to that conversation, but it isn't relevant at this moment. What I wanted to point out is that fear is a huge impedance to creativity. And that's what I love about how Ben leads Illuminate. He operates on a low fear basis by giving everyone high trust. He doesn't make artists compete against each other for work. He finds who he needs and he gives them the work. He eliminates that fear for them. And that's where creativity thrives. Now, that was a long analysis of trust and fear, but I've always had trouble putting a finger on why repeat collaborators are so important. And this low fear perspective is definitely a huge part of it. And I'll also connect this to LinkedIn, where my newsfeed is somehow filled with thousands of recruiters repeatedly saying, "Stop making job applications so complicated and stop asking for custom work samples, etc." That goes back to that non-compete for artists. It's exhausting for them to enter competition. So I love that Ben doesn't do it. He finds the artists and he asks them to collaborate. My final takeaway, Ben's model of creating art reminds me of the artists Cristo and Jeanne-Claude. Now, if you don't know who they are, I'll have a link to their work in the show notes. They were known for large-scale site-specific projects. Ones that, just like Illuminate, require working with government locations and projects that take years to complete because of their scale and, more importantly, all the red tape that they had to cut through. The best known examples of their work are wrapping Germany's Reichstag Parliament building in fabric, and also the gates in New York City's Central Park. Another reason I love Cristo and Jeanne-Claude's work is that they paid for everything themselves. It was a different model than Ben's because they would get money by selling their art and use that money to pay for the giant installations, which meant that city governments didn't have to contribute from their budget, and they just merely had to grant permission, which takes a lot. So what I love about Cristo and Jeanne-Claude and Illuminate is that they have found a way to create non-commercial art in a capitalistic system. I discuss Broadway a lot on this show, but it is commercial art. Even the nonprofit produced Broadway shows still hope to make money for their investors. But what Illuminate is doing is hiring artists and being a collective artist to provide art to make San Francisco an enjoyable place to be. No other motivation other than making the world a better, more fun place. If you've made it this far into the episode, thank you so much for listening. I hope you were able to take something away from the conversation, including reflecting on what your passion is. What I'm reflecting on is now that I'm back near St. Louis, where I grew up, I'm reminded of the wonderful elements of this city in which there's so much public art. Our sculpture park is free. Our art museum is free. Our summer musical theater, not just the Shakespeare, is free. Our zoo is free, which isn't art, but it's right in the middle of the art park. So for anyone to visit or live in San Francisco and have access to so much free art because of Ben and other people just makes that place amazing to live in and to visit. If you're feeling generous today, please consider becoming a patron of Artistic Finance. It's a passion project, and I'm grateful for everyone who has helped these conversations happen. If you're feeling generous and you're in San Francisco, consider throwing support to Illuminate. It doesn't have to be the $50,000 annual donation by the big supporters, though if you're listening and you're one of those top tier supporters who doesn't get name recognition and nobody knows, thank you for being generous and supporting an organization that is doing work without reciprocation by the audience and the attendees. If you're feeling generous with your time and your energy, drop Amy D Lux a note and tell her thank you for hosting today's interview. Again, I'll have links to everything and contact information for the guests in the show notes at artisticfinance.com/169. Now, the dad joke to end the episode: why did Illuminate's Space Cannon laser lights start telling jokes? Because They wanted to brighten everyone's day. That's it for today. Until next week, break a leg.
Thank you for listening to Artistic Finance, where we interview successful artists, leaders, and investors to help educate and inspire the creative community. To access our show notes and resources, go to artisticfinance.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decision, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Artistic Finance. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.